All right, sophomores, welcome back. This is our lesson 2 video of the notes. Before we get into the notes and I activate your brain, I want to show you a couple things on Schoology. Maybe it can help us out. When you log into Schoology, and you can see I have just 6th period U.S. history pulled up here. Now see, this past week, we've worked on lesson 1. Europe set sail. They were looking for the all-water route. So there was a page of instructions there, lesson 1. That's where my video link for the notes was. And then you guys worked on a quiz. You did a worksheet. And then just to get your thoughts going about not giving up and always trying to succeed, I had a Teddy Roosevelt quote worksheet there for you to work on and a discussion post that we looked at. So that was lesson 1, what you did. Now, if I close this back up, this week we're going to be working on lesson 2, the voyages to the Americas. Now, you can't see this in your Schoology right now because I haven't published lesson 2 yet, but after I put this video on there, I'm going to publish it for you guys to see. And you can see that there's a little page there, lesson 2, voyages to the Americas. That's instructions for this unit, and that's where my video link here. That's where you're going to find this video link. And then there are going to be 2 things for you to work on underneath this lesson, a discussion post about Columbus and a little halfway quiz that you're going to take and submit. So trying to keep Schoology organized and simple as I can, and I hope that that works. I hope that that works for you guys. We will be continuing to muddle through this process a little bit, but so far I've been pretty pleased with most of you guys being able to get on and log on to Schoology and get things submitted to me. Can't wait till I have you in class, but pretty happy with some of your grades. I think the grades have been really good, so it means you've been watching the video. I got to activate your brain at first, so I want you to think about this. Have you ever been depressed? Most of us go through some type of depression at least some point in our life. And you can see right there, that's a broken humerus bone, a broken arm. Now I want to tell you why I have that picture on there. That's a picture of this arm. I broke it. Shattered that bad boy in a weightlifting accident when I was a sophomore in high school, which is the age of almost, well, it's your guys' age. All of you sophomores. I was your age when I broke that. The bad thing about that was, about 2 or 3 nights before I broke my arm, I had this incredible basketball game. I know, I'm so old and fat now, you don't think I can play. I used to be able to play that game a little bit, but I had a great basketball game. Scored a bunch of points, and the coaches were thinking about moving me. They told me they were going to move me up to the varsity team, and I had played really well. Let's take a look at this jump shot. Boy, that's perfect form right there, isn't it? I don't have it anymore, but back then I could play a little bit. Broke my arm a couple nights later in this weightlifting accident, and obviously was done for the season. Out for the year. Coupled with the pain of the injury, I also had the pain of rehab, the pain of trying to let the bones heal, the pain of worrying about whether they were going to have to do surgery and put a rod in my arm. And all of that physical pain was nothing compared to the emotional pain for me as a sophomore, not being able to get to play this game that I loved. And I honestly, I went through a state of depression. Feeling sorry for myself. Little pity party. Woe is me. I can't play. I distanced myself from the team. Didn't want to be around basketball at all. And it worked its way into my mind and affected my schoolwork. Didn't care about school. Started trying to just sleep in class. Didn't want to apply myself. My grades started going bad. Teachers would ask me about what was wrong with me, and of course I would lie. Say nothing's wrong. And it got to the point where the principal called me into the office. Now, I lived in Virginia at the time, and the principal's name was Mr. Fuller. I do not know if Mr. Fuller is alive still today, because that's been over 35 years ago. Whew. But he called me into his office and started to question me about all these grades and my behavior in class, being not caring, my apathetic attitude. And I never will forget that he looked across the table at me and looked me in the eye. And he said, "Eads, you are an athlete, and I expect better from you." And he couldn't have took a rock and hit me right between the eyes and woke me up any more than that. And to his credit, he snapped me out of this downward spiral of depression that I was in. And from that point on, when I left his office, I went to the coach and said, "Coach, I want to be a part of the team. I'll be a water boy." Obviously, my arm was immobilized, with the sling. I had to let it heal. I couldn't do much, but I knew I could carry water bottles. And the coaches let me not only carry water bottles, but they gave me the important job of being their stat keeper for them that year. So I kept some stats. And I was around the team every day, and the coach was smart. Coach Mitchell and Coach Gifford, shout out to them. They were smart. They said, "Well, you got to be in practice every day." So I had to go to practice, get water bottle for my teammates, keep stats for them. I went over the stats with the coaches and became kind of like an assistant coach that year. And during practice, I would work on dribbling with my right hand and worked on just shooting one-handed until my arm got a little better. But to make a long story short, being involved with the team again helped bring me out of this depression, because now I wasn't so worried about my little pity party. I was worried about, okay, can the team be successful? Is there anything I can pick up looking at stats that will help us win this game? And it really gave me a job to do and helped pull me out of that funk that I was in. And on the flip side, started paying attention in class. I started hanging out with my friends instead of being a recluse. And my friends were all on the basketball team, and it helped bring me out of this depression that I was in. So I tell you that story mainly for two reasons. Number one, if you know of somebody that's going through a tough time, maybe you need to be that Mr. Fuller to your friend. Maybe you need to be the one that looks them square in the eyes and say, "Hey, you can do this. Snap out of this. We expect you to be better than this." And it might work. It worked for me. And number two, I tell you that because this relates to American history. Not for me, but I asked you this question right here a while ago. Have you ever been depressed? Well, now we know Christopher Columbus was depressed. He died a lonely and depressed man. And you're saying to yourself, how in the world can Christopher Columbus, isn't he famous? He discovered America. How can he be depressed? But now you're going to learn why today in today's notes. So I'm going to let you pause me so that you can go get out your notes, because remember, you must take good notes. I'm not using the textbook right now. I don't even have the textbook links uploaded into Schoology. I have everything right here in my head. And it's my job as a teacher to pull it out of here and stick it right there in your brain, right there. So, take good notes. It's our textbook for right now. So, let's go right on to the essential question for today. We learned in the last lesson that the countries of Europe were trying to find an all-water route to India. And the reason why they were wanting to go there was to bring back silk and spices, two items that nobles and people in Europe wanted to buy. So it was all about money. Money, 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 money. I want money. I want it now. I shouldn't quit my day job, right? I should not try to go out as a singer. So we learned that the countries in Europe were trying to get to India. The race was on. What country in Europe was going to be the first country to find an all-water route to the Far East and India and China? What country in Europe was going to get there first and claim their share of all of the wealth that they could make in this trade. Well, Portugal, that little small tiny country beside Spain, they were the ones leading the way because of Prince Henry the Navigator funding all of these voyages of exploration for Portugal. The explorers that he had, like Bartholomew Diaz, who were brave men who would brave the wide, vast expanse of the great ocean and the unknown, trying to find their way to the Far East. But there was a guy, an Italian explorer named Christopher Columbus, and he had a bold new plan. Think about it this way. If I was in a race, I'm in it to win it. And if I'm not faster than the other person, I'm going to do a couple things like trip them, might find a way to cheat, or I'm going to look for a what? You guessed it, a shortcut. Christopher Columbus had this bold new plan. He's like, I'm going to win the race. I'm going to beat those Portuguese. And I'm going to beat them because I'm going to take a shortcut. I'm going to put a map of the world up right here. And let's take a look at it for a minute. This is a map of the world, obviously on flat paper. Of course, right here is Europe. I'll go ahead and label it in. If I can get the right, let's use red. Here we go. I'll just put a big E. Right there is Europe. And of course, over here is India and China in the Far East. You already know that the Portuguese, which Portugal is a little tiny country right there, they were trying to sail around Africa to get to the Far East. And Bartholomew Diaz is the first person to go around the southern tip of Africa before he ran out of supplies and had to go back. Now, I know all of you guys know that the Americas are over here, North America, South America, but I want to do this just to show you something. Pretend it's not there. People in Europe, they did not know all of this was over here. So I want you to take your hand here. We'll block it out. Now, Christopher Columbus believed, unlike many people in his day, that the world was round, not flat. And Christopher Columbus believed that he could sail west from Europe, this way, and that he was going to sail around the world and come up to India on the other side. He believed it could be done. He believed he could take a shortcut and sail west around the world and come up here to the Far East and to China and to India on the other side. Now, I guess my question to you is, was he right? His plan was right. The earth is round. You can sail west across the Atlantic and eventually end up in the Far East in China and India. But there was a small problem with his plan. It really wasn't much of a shortcut. And here's why. He didn't know that the North and South America continents were there. So basically, yes, you guessed it. Christopher Columbus tried to sail to India, and as he sailed west across the Atlantic, he landed over here in some islands in the Caribbean known as the West Indies. Now, why do you think they call them the West Indies? Now, let's go back over your compass rose. North, east, south, west. Christopher Columbus thought that he was in India at first. Christopher Columbus even named the native Indians that he saw there. He named them Indians because he thought he was in India. He had no idea how big the world truly was. So he had a good plan. He just ran into a little surprise called North and South America. He bumped into North and South America. This morning, I was trying to get ready to come to work. and the lights were off, and I turned the light off in the bathroom, started walking through the bedroom, and I bumped into something that made me fall down and trip. It was my 90-pound German Shepherd who was just laying there on the floor quietly sleeping, but I couldn't see him in the dark. I bumped into him. Christopher Columbus bumped into North and South America, or his plan would have worked. Now let's take a look. Now you may have to pause my screen, but the very first essential question that we're going to talk about today is EQ number 3. What was Columbus's goal? What was he actually trying to do? Go ahead and pause me and write this question and answer down. You're back. Christopher Columbus had a goal. His goal was to reach India and the Far East by sailing west across the Atlantic. He was going to go the other way. He was going to take a shortcut. He was going to win the race. He was going to win the race by taking a shortcut. Bumped into North and South America, though. But his goal and the answer to EQ number 3 was, what was Christopher Columbus's goal? He was going to sail west across the Atlantic. He was going to get to India the other way. It didn't work. Now, we're going to look at the last essential question today. Identify what Columbus did during his explorations of the New World. You can pause me and write down these answers, and we'll discuss them for a minute. We're back. Christopher Columbus, you always kind of hear he discovered America. Yeah, technically that's kind of wrong. Technically, if we look at the map, he never really landed on the shore of North America or South America, but in the islands out here in the Caribbean. So we tend to technically say he discovered America, but what he really discovered was a whole new world. It reminds me of the Aladdin song. You ever watched Aladdin? It's a whole new world. He discovered a whole new world over here. And that's what we're crediting him with. From Europe's point of view, he discovered a whole new world, a whole new continent west across the Atlantic. And it wasn't India, it wasn't China, it wasn't the Far East, it was a whole new world that he discovered over here. So technically, we can say that Christopher Columbus can be credited for discovering this whole new world. Technically not the Americas, but we're just crossing hairs here, dividing hairs. But the main thing is he discovered a whole new world over here that Europe did not know existed. And while he was over here, he actually made a couple trips over and back. But just like the answer to your question, EQ number 4, he left behind a colony of his men. He made maps of his voyages so people could, coming behind him, could find their way over to these islands in the West Indies. But the most important thing he did was that he took things back to Europe from the Americas, and he brought things over from Europe. He took things back to Europe from America, and he brought the Americas, and he brought things from the New World back to Europe. It was vice versa. And that is known as the Columbian Exchange, which we'll talk about in another section of notes. Now, I'll also have a link in our lesson. There's a lot of evidence here, and we're talking about Christopher Columbus Day and how we celebrate that. And it's also known as Indigenous Peoples Day because Native Americans like to celebrate that day in honor of themselves too. I have a link in this folder where you will pull up a link that takes you to a website that talks about Christopher Columbus, the untold story. And unfortunately, there's a lot of evidence that shows that Christopher Columbus and his men made slaves out of the Native American people that they found over in the New World, and that maybe perhaps that some of the women were mistreated. Very sad to think about. So I have you look at that, Christopher Columbus, The Untold Story, and then once you read that, there's a discussion post in this lesson where you talk about, should we really celebrate Christopher Columbus? Do we celebrate him for discovering this whole new world from Europe's point of view, which you're going to find leads to the American colonies, the British colonies that's what we're getting to here in the next lesson. But should we celebrate him? You know, he and his men made slaves of these Native Americans. It's just something to think about a little bit. And that's what that assignment in there causes us to do. And I can't wait to read some of your guys' thoughts and opinions about it. But you have to read that article with that link in there first. Now we have a couple vocabulary words that we have to talk about. So let's get to them. We only have 3 vocabulary words, 8 through 11. And the first one, of course, is Columbus. We could write down many things about him. We could write down that he died lonely and depressed. We could write down that he was a famous explorer. But the thing that I want you to note for our unit here is that he's the explorer that gets credited for discovering this whole new world. Yes, he did that in the year 1492. Remember the poem, 1492, Columbus sailed the ocean blue. And he had the Nina and the Maria and the Nina, the Pinta, and the Santa Maria. That were the names of his ships. But this is the definition that I want you to know for our test. That he's the man credited for discovering this whole new world. Even though, while he was making all these trips over to the Americas, Portugal was finding the all-water route to India, and Columbus actually lost the race. He lost. And he felt like his life was a failure. It took him a while to realize that he wasn't in India, that he was in a whole different place. But remember, his goal wasn't to discover a new world. He wasn't trying to do that. He was trying to establish a trade route to India and China, and he didn't get that done. He felt like he was a failure. Now, our next vocabulary words are 2 very important people. Now, this is Ferdinand and Isabella. They were the king and queen of Spain, and they funded Columbus's voyage. You can pause me at any time and copy that down, but let's talk about it a second. Imagine if you're Christopher Columbus and you're trying to get rich people, kings or queens, to fund your idea, your exploration. You know, you want a king or queen somewhere to buy your ships, pay your men, buy the supplies, and you're making the sales pitch. You know, I'm going to India. I'm going to win the race. I'm going to find this all-water route. And we're going to establish this trade route for you, king, for you, queen, and you're going to make lots of money off of this. That's his sales pitch. And then when they ask him, well, how are you going to get there? And Columbus says, I'm going to take a shortcut. I'm going to sail all the way around the world. Most of these people were like, we're out. We're not going to invest our money. You're going to sail off the end of the world. You're going to die. You're not going to make it. Most of these people were not willing to invest their money in Christopher Columbus's bold new plan. But there was somebody that he finally talked into it, the king and queen of Spain, Ferdinand and Isabella. And they were the ones that finally said, you know what, Columbus, we believe in you. Take the shortcut. You can get there, and we're going to buy your ships and pay your men and pay for your sailors and buy your supplies. And they did that. Ferdinand and Isabella. Now, before we get to the last 2 words, the line of demarcation, I don't want to move it there yet. Let's move it back up. There we go. All right. I want to talk to you about something else. Okay? Even though Columbus died and thought he was a failure, I want you to think about the impact of discovering a new world and what it had. Other countries of Europe decided to come over and check out this place, this new world. They wanted to see what was here, okay? And eventually, it basically turned the countries of Europe. It made them turn their heads. They were all looking this way to the Far East, right? They were all trying to find an all-water route to China and to India so that they could get the silk and spices, okay? So their attention was all this way. But then word gets to people in Europe that Columbus has discovered a new world. So they start to say, what's over there? Well, of course, you all know from your previous history classes that the Spanish conquistadors came over and they, explored part of Mexico. And they found something that was more important and more valuable than silk and pepper and spices. You know what they found? Gold. Yes, the Spanish conquistadors found that the Aztec Indians and the Mayan Indians, they had gold. Now think about it for a minute. If you had a choice, pepper and silk or gold, what are you going to choose? If you had gold, you can buy as much of pepper and silk as you wanted. Think about it. So with Christopher Columbus discovering this whole new world, and the rumors come back that there's gold over here, all of a sudden the countries of Europe decide. They change their head. They go from looking at China in the Far East, an all-water route, to suddenly they're turning their head. Columbus discovered what? Gold? Oh, gold. Let's go over here. And that's right. All of a sudden, the all-water route to India became less important for people, and the whole new world opened up a whole new world of possibilities. Gold. There were two countries then who basically turned all of their efforts to this whole new world, the Americas. Spain and Portugal. They were two countries in Europe that were neighbors, side by side. Ooh, boy, they were in competition. Kind of like you and your brother. Yeah, your brother. You want to be in competition with him. You don't want little brother to ever beat you. But little brother always wants to beat big brother. Competition drives all of us. Competition's a good thing. And Portugal and Spain were in competition for each other. So Portugal and Spain decided that their efforts were going to focus mainly on this whole new world. This whole new world that was discovered. Let me pull this down a little bit. This whole new world over here, Portugal and Spain, right here in Europe, they were going to start focusing all their attention over here so that they could get some gold. Now, I always like to think of girls. Now that sounded funny, but if you think of two guys who like the same girl, what's going to happen? A fight. So if you have two countries who are trying to claim the same land over here in the New World, eventually what's going to happen? A fight. They're going to fight. Portugal and Spain had these competition for land. They had this competition for land. They had a lot of this stuff going on, and this competition and these high emotions, and they were headed towards war. So at the time, what the Pope, who was the leader of the Roman Catholic Church in Europe, decided to do was he decided to come in and be the peacemaker, and they sat down and created an imaginary line that would divide everything up between Spain and Portugal. I just made you hungry, didn't I? Look at that. Let's eat a pizza. Yeah, we're going to divide it up for you. I'll let... you can have this piece right here. I'll take this big old piece over here. Yeah, I'll take that for me. You say that's not fair? Life's not fair. I get the bigger piece of pizza. I think you can see what was happening. So what the Pope did was he said, look, we need to make an imaginary line in the New World, and we'll divide it up, and we'll let Spain take part of it, and we'll let Portugal have part of it, and everybody will be happy. We'll compromise. So that's exactly what the line of demarcation did. So the line of demarcation was an imaginary line, and it divided the New World between Portugal and Spain, and it kept them from fighting, and it said, hey, Portugal can have everything on this side of the line, and Spain can have everything on that side of the line, and everybody will be happy. Now I'm going to draw an imaginary line right here. I don't think I have it down here. Let's take a look. I do not. But let's take a look for a second. Okay, you ready for this? Let's see if I can get it to work. Well, my line is not very straight, obviously. All right, everything on this side of the line Spain can get. Everything on this side of the line Portugal can have. Well, look, you see a little place right there. That's not very much of the pizza for Portugal, is it? Look, that's that little tiny piece of pizza right here. But Spain getting all the rest of it. The line of demarcation wasn't very fair. And that's what happened with Portugal. They did what all teenagers do when you guys think that something's not fair. You stomp your foot like this and go, that's not fair. Oh, I kill myself. Yeah, Portugal said, wait, that's not fair. We have a little piece of pizza. Spain, you're getting a big piece of pizza. This is not right. And Portugal whined about it not being fair. And in truth, you know what? It wasn't fair. So they had another meeting. Remind you of anything? It's kind of like our state government. They have meetings. They change everything. They had another meeting. And at this meeting, they signed the Treaty of Tordesillas. Don't you just love Spanish? The double L makes a Y sound. The Treaty of Tordesillas. And they called it the Treaty of Tordesillas because they met and signed it in a city called, you guessed it, Tordesillas. That's why they call it the Treaty of Tordesillas, because they met in Tordesillas and signed the treaty. Whew. We don't get too complicated with names in social studies. Now, what the Treaty of Tordesillas did was it moved the line of demarcation, the LOD, and it moved it to make it more even. So here's what we're going to do. We're going to erase this imaginary line that I drew. We're going to pretend we were at the Treaty of Tordesillas, and then we're going to come over and make it a little more even. As soon as I get my red marker. All right, now we just made it more even. Most of South America, all of South America was going to go to Portugal. And then, of course, you can see Mexico right there, and we all know that that's the land and stuff that Spain got to claim. I have to tell a story on me because it's embarrassing, but a couple years ago we had a foreign exchange student at Midland Trail. Her name was Carolina Serrato, and she was from Brazil, which is in South America. So I thought I was going to be really cool, you know. So I went up to Carolina, and I started talking to her in Spanish. I was trying to impress her with my Spanish-speaking skills, and I thought that she would like it if someone spoke to her from here in America in her native language. So I was talking some Spanish to her, and she stopped me, and she said, in Brazil, we speak Portuguese, not Spanish. And it hit me. When she said that, I was like, oh, yeah, duh, the line of demarcation. You know, I should know this as a history teacher, but I had a moment of brain fatigue and forgot. I was so embarrassed. But yes, guess what people in South America speak? They speak Portuguese because Portugal right here, the little country of Portugal right here, got to claim all of this land in the Treaty of Tordesillas for Portugal. So they have a Portuguese background. And of course, Spain right here, beside Portugal, they claimed all of this land over here in what is modern day Mexico. So that's why people in Mexico have a Spanish background. You can trace that all the way back to the line of demarcation in the Treaty of Tordesillas. You would have thought I would have known that before I embarrassed myself talking to Carolina Serrato, but I did not. So, the line of demarcation was this imaginary line that divided the New World between Portugal and Spain. And the Treaty of Tordesillas, our last vocabulary word, moved the line of demarcation to make things more even. Now, I think that's the end of this lesson, but you know where we're going with this, because now that this whole new world is over here, England is going to get in on the game. And England is going to come over to this new world and claim land for England, which is going to end up being the British colonies, which end up being the country of America. So now we're going to get to that in the next lesson. So I hope I didn't bore you too much. I hope you took really good notes. I hope to see all of you guys soon in class, where we can have some fun and learn about all this stuff together. Watch the video, take notes. There are 2 assignments in this lesson: a discussion post on Christopher Columbus and a halfway quiz that kind of just uses questions from our notes that you've supposed to have been taking. You should have essential questions 1, 2, 3, and 4, and you should have vocabulary words 1 through 11 right now. If you do, you're up to date. Until next time, I'll leave you with this one more time. It's a whole new world. Gold.